A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a historic display of dissent, citizens across the United States are gathering for the No Kings protests, rallying against President Donald Trump's administration and its perceived authoritarian tendencies. Scheduled for Saturday, these demonstrations are expected to take place in over 2,500 locations nationwide, with initial reports indicating that millions may participate. This movement follows a successful round of protests in June that saw over 5 million individuals take to the streets, and organizers are hopeful for even larger crowds this time around. The protests come amid a government shutdown that has now entered its third week, with many demonstrators expressing frustration over what they see as Trump's attempts to consolidate power during this period. Organizers, including the grassroots group Indivisible, have framed the protests as a stand against Trump's authoritarian power grabs. Ezra Levin, a co-founder of Indivisible, emphasized the importance of collective action, stating, "There is no greater threat to an authoritarian regime than patriotic people power." In the lead-up to the protests, President Trump has publicly insisted that he is not a king, a statement that has been met with skepticism from many in the opposition. As tensions rise, some administration officials and Republican leaders have dismissed the protests as Hate America rallies, attributing them to leftist groups like Antifa. In response, a coalition of civil rights and advocacy organizations has organized the demonstrations, aiming to draw attention to issues of democracy and civil rights. Ahead of the protests, several Republican governors have activated the National Guard in anticipation of potential unrest. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, for instance, has characterized the Austin demonstration as Antifa-linked, warning that any acts of violence will be met with swift law enforcement action. Meanwhile, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, speaking at a rally in Washington, D.C., criticized Trump, labeling him as the most corrupt president in the history of America. Murphy stated that the president's actions during the shutdown do not grant him any additional powers, urging citizens to join the protests. The No Kings protests also carry a symbolic element, with organizers encouraging participants to wear yellow. This color has historically been associated with peaceful resistance and solidarity against authoritarian regimes. The organizers pointed to past movements, such as the 2014 protests in Hong Kong and the yellow ribbons used in South Korea following a ferry disaster, as examples of how color can unify and amplify a message of dissent. As the day of protests unfolds, reports indicate that demonstrations have already begun in cities like New York, where thousands have gathered in Times Square, chanting slogans and holding signs. California Senator Adam Schiff drew parallels between Trump's presidency and monarchy, invoking the spirit of the American Revolution and the founders' grievances against British rule. He urged citizens to participate in the rallies, emphasizing that the American story is about collective citizenship, not the rule of a single individual. Demonstrators have taken to the streets in various cities, chanting slogans such as "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Donald Trump has got to go," and displaying signs that call for accountability and justice. In cities across the nation, from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., crowds have gathered to voice their opposition to the current administration. Simultaneously, protests are occurring in Europe, with solidarity demonstrations reported in cities such as London, Berlin, and Madrid. These international displays of support highlight the global resonance of the issues at hand and the shared commitment to democratic values. As the protests continue throughout the day, the atmosphere remains charged, with both sides of the political spectrum weighing in on the unfolding events. While many Democrats encourage peaceful participation, some Republicans have advised their constituents to avoid the demonstrations altogether, suggesting they spend the day watching college football instead. In a preview of an upcoming interview, President Trump addressed the protests, reiterating his stance that he is not a king. However, the ongoing demonstrations suggest a significant portion of the population feels otherwise, and they are prepared to make their voices heard in a united front against what they perceive as a threat to democracy. As the No Kings protests unfold, the nation watches closely, aware that this moment could mark a pivotal point in the ongoing struggle for civil rights and democratic governance in the United States. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, So hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.